So how do you forge one single national identity when you have 56 different ethnic groups? Well, China thinks it has the answer, and it's a huge new law that's poised to totally redefine what it even means to be Chinese.
All right, so here's the headline. China's top governing body just passed a massive new law. And the goal? Wow, it's ambitious. They want to unite all 56 of their officially recognized ethnic groups under one single shared identity. This is a huge shift in policy, so let's really dig into what that's going to look like.
And get this, it wasn't even close. The law sailed through the National People's Congress with a vote of 2,756 in favor and only 3 against. When you see numbers like that, with that kind of near-unanimous support, it just screams how much political muscle is behind this whole thing.
Okay, but to really wrap our heads around the impact of a law like this, we've got to zoom out a bit and look at the bigger picture. So, let's kick things off with Section 1 and get some of that crucial context.
And here's the demographic breakdown you absolutely need to know. China officially has 56 different ethnic groups, right? But the Han Chinese? They make up more than 91% of the entire 1.4 billion population. That leaves the other 55 groups. We're talking about Tibetans, Uyghurs, Mongols, and many others, making up the other 9%. It's that dynamic, that massive majority alongside dozens of distinct minority cultures, that this new law is set to completely re-engineer.
The law itself is officially called the Law on Promoting Ethnic Unity and Progress. And hey, this isn't some idea for the distant future. It's slated to take full effect on July 1st, 2026. So, it's just around the corner. Okay, so that's the setup. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty. For Section 2, we're going to break down what this law actually says.
So the law is really built on a few key pillars. First off, it makes Mandarin the main language for schools and all government stuff. It also pushes for more integration between ethnic groups, through things like housing, migration, and even by encouraging inter-ethnic marriage. Then, and this is a really big one, it makes the sinicization of religion mandatory. And to top it all off, it includes these broad clauses designed to stop separatism and keep things stable.
And you can see how this plays out in the real world, especially with language. Before, you might see a sign where a minority language and Mandarin have equal billing, right next to each other. But under the new law, nope. Mandarin has to be given prominence in placement, order, and similar respects. It sounds like a small change, but man, it creates a really clear linguistic hierarchy.
So, you might be asking, what's the official reason for such a huge transformative law? What's the government's stated goal here? Well, that takes us right into Section 3, the official push for a single shared identity.
All right, to really get what the government is aiming for, there's one word you have to understand: sinicization. This is the ideological engine driving the whole thing. It's basically the process where non-Han groups are brought into the orbit of Han Chinese culture. We're talking language, social norms, the whole shebang. And this new law? It's a very clear, top-down push to put that process on hyperdrive.
Now, from the government's perspective, this isn't about wiping out cultures. Just look at this quote from an editorial in the state-run China Daily. They argue the law actually protects cultural traditions. The official line is that ethnic minorities don't have to pick between their culture and economic progress, that they can have both, just as long as it's within one unified Chinese nation. So, when you boil it all down, what's the end game from Beijing's point of view? Well, according to the official documents, it's all about creating a stronger sense of community and pushing forward the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. And this is absolutely critical. The law makes it crystal clear that this new, unified identity will have the Communist Party right at its very core. But, as you can imagine, there's another side to this story. Not everybody sees this law as a good thing. And that brings us to Section 4, the really serious concerns that critics are raising. Okay, so critics, we're talking international scholars, human rights groups, people like that, they have some major issues. They're worried this law will weaken or maybe even completely erode unique minority languages and cultures. They don't see integration, they see it as a path to forced assimilation into the Han majority culture. And a huge red flag for a lot of them are these kind of vague clauses about unity, which they're afraid could be used to squash any kind of dissent. Listen to how James Liebold, a professor at La Trobe University who's an expert on this stuff, puts it. He says this law puts a death knell on the party's original promise of meaningful autonomy. In his eyes, this is a total break from how things used to be. And that analysis is backed up by Alan Carlson from Cornell University. He says the law makes it clearer than ever that under President Xi Jinping, if you're not Han Chinese, you have one main job: integrate with the Han majority and, more than anything else, be totally loyal to Beijing.
So we've heard the official side. This is about unity and progress. And we've heard the critical side. This is about assimilation and control. Which brings us to our final section, where we really have to ask, what's actually at stake here?
You know, when you strip everything else away, the whole debate really comes down to this one single question. Is this law a tool for healthy national integration, or is it a machine for forced cultural assimilation? And honestly, the answer you get completely depends on who you're talking to.
And when you put the two viewpoints side by side, wow, the difference is just stark. One side says forging a shared identity. The other says eroding unique identities. One side says promoting unity. The other forced assimilation. We're talking about two completely opposite reads of the very same law.
And that leaves us with this final thought. As China moves forward with this law, the rest of the world is definitely going to be watching. It really leaves all of us with a pretty deep question, one that goes way beyond China's borders. In our modern world, what happens to cultural diversity when it comes up against the incredible, centralizing power of national unity?